Welcome.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. While we're having people come in and admitting some more of our guests, we're expecting a little over 70 people this evening to join us to hear Pam Lowell speak about her summer with Osprey, her book, My Summer with Osprey. And we all know that we just spent this summer with Osprey, so we hope that everybody is enjoying their new seasons and watching the fledglings leave. Please answer the polls. There's some questions up, and we want to see what you guys are thinking. So, how many questions are there, Deb?
Just 4 questions.
4 questions.
Yep.
Please complete the poll.
And we're going to, at the end, we will look at the answers, and we will randomly pick a name to win a King's Yard bird feeder. So please make sure you answer them all.
So, and while you're answering, and while a few more people are joining us, we're just going to give people until like maybe a minute after 7 just to get in and get settled. Quick introductions. I'm Joyce Lights. I'm Executive Director of Connecticut Audubon Society, and I am deeply honored to lead an organization that you are members of. You make all of what we do possible, and during this membership month, we cannot thank you enough. Deb Eccleston is our membership manager. You've probably spoken with her or seen emails from her. She's incredibly knowledgeable about birds and osprey in particular. And if you have any questions about membership or what you want to be doing during the membership month, please reach out to Deb. And I'm very pleased to be able to introduce Melissa Gallagher-Smith, our new Director of Development. You're going to be hearing a lot more from Melissa over the next few months. Melissa is thrilled to be joining us, or so she tells me.
I am. I definitely am.
So let's see. We are just a little bit after 7. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. Let's see. For the best viewing experience, everyone's going to be on mute because we are expecting so many people. We recommend using speaker view, which you're going to find in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. That's going to give you a great viewing experience. We are recording this program this evening, and so it will be posted on our member portal. Be sure to check for that. Enter your questions in chat, which you'll find in the middle of the bar that pops up on the bottom of the screen. And Pam and Deb and Melissa will be fielding those questions at the end of the whole presentation. I'm going to give a few more people. Again, when you come in, you're probably seeing a poll in the middle of the screen. Take the opportunity to answer those poll questions. Join us in the poll, as Deb mentioned. For those who have just joined us, we are going to be doing a raffle this evening for a gift and a prize. So we hope that you enjoy the presentation. I am very excited to hear Pam speak about my summer with Osprey from a therapist point of view. So, Deb, if you would like to introduce.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Joyce. And thanks, Melissa, for being here and helping me out with this. A big thank you to all our members for joining us tonight for this special membership-only event. As membership manager, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for being part of the Connecticut Audubon Society and for your ongoing support of birds and other wildlife in Connecticut. Your generosity and commitment inspire me every day as membership manager, so thank you so much. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here for an exciting discussion with Pam Lowell, the talented author of My Summer with the Ospreys. Pam is not only an author, but also a licensed clinician, social worker, and an avid birder, and a very wonderful watercolor artist. She has graciously joined us this evening to share her experience from last summer when she volunteered with the Massachusetts Audubon, and an experience that inspired her to write this book, My Summer with the Ospreys, a therapist's journey toward hope, community, and healing our planet. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Pamela Lowell. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you. Greetings, Osprey Nation. I've heard that's how you want to be referred to, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Connecticut Audubon. Thank you all for hosting. I was saying before we started, I have a very special place in my heart for Ospreys, of course, but also for Connecticut, having visited the state over the old Tappan Zee Bridge many times to visit my grandmother and my aunt and my uncle, who was a fireman in Danbury, my cousin who still lives in Ridgefield. So, and I was lucky enough to stop by Hammonasset for the very first time this summer as well. And what a gorgeous, gorgeous place that is too. So thank you for all your tender, loving care and concern about our wonderful Ospreys. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my book and my journey through last summer and beyond. So let's see, this is the cover of the book, which some of you have already read. And all the, I should say, all the paintings and drawings and photographs in this presentation are all my own except for one, and you'll know what that is. And before we get really started, first, a brief, oops, where's my thing? A word from our sponsors. And I could listen to that sound forever. I'm already grieving their departure once again. I did see one the other day, so they're still flying around here in the south coast of Massachusetts. But as I say in my book, we never know when the last time we'll see one for the season is, and we always hope that we'll be around to see them when they return. So here we go. Let's get started. Oh. I am trying to advance my screen and having trouble up here. I'll go over here and do it. There we go. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I started out as an art teacher. This is, I'm going to use my pointer if you can see it. This is a picture of babyface me in 1980 as an art teacher. I know I look very much the same as no, that's a joke. Don't look. I was so young. Oh, I didn't appreciate it. Anyway, this is the first time I met a social worker. I worked with some special needs kids outside of DC and realized pretty quickly that classroom management was pretty tricky and probably not for me, and that I wanted to learn more about these kids' background and really get a little deeper into their trauma. So I went back to school to become a social worker and a therapist, and I did that for my entire career. Mostly just did therapy, did some training and consulting work. This is me doing a training in 2020 in Providence, Rhode Island, at one of the not-for-profit agencies that I worked for there for about 10 years. So here I am. This is the very, very first day of my adventure, and this is Matt Zucconi behind me, and he was a 24-year-old scientist who had been hired by Mass Audubon that summer to man the ship. He steered the boat, and he was in charge of all of us volunteers who were volunteering for the Mass Audubon Osprey project. And the funny thing about that, which was, I guess it was funny, was that he had never operated a boat before. And so 2 months earlier, he was learning how to steer a powerboat around very low water salt marshes. And we did get stuck quite a few times in the salt marsh, and there were a few mishaps. I won't share all those, although, you know, he probably wouldn't mind. So, and I did take a video that first. Go off on the adventure. Oops. What I didn't know then, and what I didn't calculate, was that for some reason that this project was going to involve climbing very tall ladders. And I should say that I am somebody who has always been afraid of heights. You can ask people who knew me back in college and certainly in my young adult years. I really was pretty terrified of heights. So the first day that we pulled up to a ladder and Matt said, okay, you know, up you go. And I just sort of was scratching my head that I had somehow not calculated that this was what it was going to involve. The reason for that is because one of the reasons I really wanted to be involved with the Mass Audubon Project was because I wanted to get more photographs of ospreys, and I thought this would be a good way to do it. I also loved birds, but I knew absolutely nothing about the project at the time when I signed up for it. So there I am. I just realized if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen. So as many of you probably do when you're, you know, I'm sure some of you are volunteering and getting trash out of the nests and doing all sorts of other things, up you go. Here is what the marshes look like in the south coast of Massachusetts, probably very similar to the habitat that you're seeing in Connecticut. This is early in the spring. It's still pretty chilly out on the water. It doesn't really warm up, as you know, till probably June or maybe July. We're still wearing jackets, long pants, and boots. And what we do in our project is we signed up for 3-hour shifts. So once a week for 3 hours, we would check nests, about maybe 10 nests at a time, depending on how many we can fit in, depending on tide and weather and wind. And we are taking data, much like you do in Connecticut. We're doing it for a little bit of a different reason, I think, which we'll get into a little later. But we're doing it for our translocation project on the South Coast in conjunction with the University of Illinois. So we'll talk about that, and I'll explain all about that as we move along. This is just walking on the salt marshes. That's kind of a dry salt marsh. And I guess I usually, if I'm doing this in front of people, of an audience, I ask people to kind of raise their hands. How many people have walked on a salt marsh? So I can ask the folks here who can see me, how many of you have walked on a salt marsh? You can just raise your hand, or you can even press the screen if you want to. How many of you have, okay, walked on a salt marsh in your bare feet? Ah, I see some signs. Good. And if you were live in front of me, I would ask what that experience was like for you. For me, if it's sort of dry like this, probably not, I probably wouldn't even walk in my bare feet. But when it's mucky, it's pretty mucky. And I have seen just about everyone who came out on the boat with us and who comes out at least falls once during the season. Whoop, right over. Their foot goes right into a sinkhole or gets stuck in the muck, and over they go and they get wet. So that is a tip when walking through the salt marshes. Always remember to wear your boots, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's important in a few minutes. You'll see. Here are some photographs of some of the things that you can see. We were talking a bit about that before you joined us, and talking about how ospreys are collectors. They do love to decorate those nests. And it's just gorgeous up there. What the colors of the seaweed. Once we saw, you can see some corn cobs here, but we this year saw a whole wreath of corn cobs surrounding the eggs. How tender and beautiful it was to see that. And the eggs are just astounding. It's hard to describe to me how rich and textured and beautiful they really were. And the view, of course. Here is the view. I call this photo Room with a View. It is a view of our salt marshes that not that many people, unless you're up on the ladder or you have one of those drones, do you really get to see. And here is an example of right next to it, one of the slides one of the paintings that I did for the book of that particular photograph. So you can kind of see one of the things that was happening for me from the very start was I realized how amazing this adventure was going to be. And so every day when I went out, I took tons of photographs, tons of video, little video clips, and I started writing everything down, because even then I had a feeling that it would be something that I would want to share, or at least keep for myself. And I'm really glad that I did that, because it allowed me to really capture that experience in real time. I was writing the book in real time, basically, which I had never done before. And that was kind of fun. And then I was also doing some paintings and some sketches from the photographs that I took, because it just was filling me up. So how did this really start happening? My husband and I had moved to South Dartmouth, Massachusetts in February of 2022. And that summer, we decided to go kayaking on the Westport River. And unbeknownst to us, we were there during fledging time. And on our river in Westport, we have a east and west branch. We have over 100 nests, very densely packed. So within just a span of a mile or two, it's really a great place for research, because you can collect a lot of data without a lot of volunteers per se, and without spending a lot of time. But on that day, again, I didn't know any of that. And we were there in mid-August. And so you have, 100 nests times 2 osprey parents per nest times one or two chicks. They don't all fledge. They don't all make it. They don't all have successful broods. But the ones that did in early to mid-August, were just swarming all over the sky. It was a cacophony of noise and diving and swooping. And I just went, whoa, I need to paint this. I hadn't painted anything except maybe for a few little whatever, not a whole lot, since I was an art teacher. I wasn't doing it professionally. I was doing it very recreationally, like not that often. But for some reason, I was inspired to say, I really want to do gigantic osprey paintings, like full size sheets of watercolor. And what better way to get more photographs than join up with Mass Audubon? Some fun facts, which you probably already know. You're going to get the answers. Some of your quiz answers could be right here, so pay attention. Found on every continent except for Antarctica. The first question in your quiz. I've given it to you. It's a gift. Single species with their own genus and family, over 5-foot wingspan. They fly really high in the air, and they have about an 85% success rate, depending, which is pretty cool. I mean, I think that's, you see them hovering, you see them accounting for light refraction. It's pretty amazing that they have that high for adults. That's not juveniles, but for an adult experience osprey in perfect conditions. That's their success rate. They can arrange their fish in midair with their talons. Oops, another question maybe. Closable nostrils too. That might be a trick question, because I think 2 of those are on there. They're 11 million years old as a species. That is phenomenal. And their migration, where they go, how they do it, down to South America, down to Africa. We have data from a Westport, Massachusetts osprey flying to Africa in 12 days. It's just mind-boggling. And they have all these lovely vocalizations that express feelings. I mean, they're just a really stand-up family kind of bird, and it's no wonder that we all love them so much. They're just super interesting and fun and funny, and they're just resilient. And yeah, I can go on and on, but I'm not gonna yet. I will. You'll hear me wax poetic about them. So how could I not paint them? Here are some of the photographs I took that very day when I was kayak. This is my kayak, still my kayak. All of these photographs made it into a painting at one time or another. And let's see. So part of that journey was I always thought it would be kind of a fun idea in my retirement to do something, some kind of volunteer work. And when I started doing these paintings, I thought, wow, maybe I could donate a painting to a nature organization. That might be kind of cool. Again, I hadn't painted anything in years. Who would even want these paintings? I'd never been in a gallery. I'd never sold anything, any of my work. I had been a therapist. But I entered, I gave the first painting to the Westport watershed here in Massachusetts and we donated it. There was an online raffle, much like I guess Audubon's and watersheds like to have raffles. I don't know. I love raffles. I think they're fun and exciting. But anyway, so there was an online bidding contest, and for an entire week, my painting, which one of my friends suggested that I donate, didn't get any bids at all. And I was, and my cousin in Connecticut was like, I'll put a bid in for you, Pam, just so somebody bids on it. I was like, nope, we're going to be honest. Let's keep it honest. Long story short, it ended up that there was a bidding war on that painting, and it did get the highest bid in the show. And I was shocked. I was jumping up and down. I was just thrilled. And it gave me some confidence to do some other things with my artwork. And I entered then a few juried exhibits. This was the exhibit for the Cape Cod Museum of Art, their In Tandem exhibit, where there were international entries. And I guess almost all the states, people were entering their works, and there were sculptures, paintings, all sorts of stuff. The theme of the exhibit was in tandem, which they defined as two or more things working in concert for a desired result. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of the story of the Ospreys' success and return from near extinction. Man, women, scientists, politicians, citizen scientists, and volunteers all work together to bring the osprey back. So I wrote my little statement. We got a chance to do a minute or two talk at the reception. So this is me at the reception, again, very excited and just sort of like, wow, I can't even believe that I'm here. And this is what I decided to read. And a lot of you know this story. A lot of, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a lot when I do these talks. But I wasn't preaching to the choir that night, because many people there, even though they lived on Cape Cod, and this is a story about their birds too, they didn't realize that by 1964, because of pesticides, there were only 11 nesting pairs in all of Massachusetts. And then I read a little bit, and the audience was like, they sort of gasped when you could hear the gasp. As I was reading that and talking about, though our work is not done, we still need to keep the wetlands safe and free from pesticides. This is what birders do. I think we start out birding, and then we can't help but feel more connected to our earth and in an urgency about what we can do to help. So For me, though, it was the first time that I made a connection between having a platform, not the Osprey platform, but my own platform, about using art to educate and connect and inspire people to care in a different way. So that's why I include that in my presentation, and I'll circle back around that later. So we got to do data. I don't know what your data sheets look like, but this is what ours look like. And we are numbering where this in yellow highlight is the number of the nesting site that we're going to visit that day. And this number 1, 2, 3, 4 is the order. We're going to go and check them. And we are checking and recording. Are there eggs? Are there pips, which is a little hole, which tells us any minute now, within 24 hours, there will be a chick probably. And we're counting chicks. Excuse me, I'm just gonna take a drink of water, getting dry. The day that I was allowed to collect that data, I was pretty excited. I really did feel like a citizen scientist that day. Previously, I'd just been taking tons and tons and tons of pictures. Now I was going to do something really important, and I was a little nervous, like, oh no, what if I put it in the wrong line? I'm going to screw their data up. But they also take pictures of the nest, of the number, so they have a backup system, because I guess I'm not the only person that could screw that up for them. Very exciting day, May 21st, my first chick. You can see the little egg tooth here is still present. And for those of you who have seen these chicks up close, it is an honor and a privilege that not many people get to experience because they are protected. So I was beyond excited. So excited, I went home and did a little painting, and you can see probably the little egg tooth even more clear there. Birding is good for your mental health, so as a therapist I like to bring that in. Ooh. How about that? That was a pretty fun video. I'm going to show that to you one more time for those of, because you mental health wise, you just probably got a little boost of endorphins then when you saw that little chick. And that's supposed, oops, I don't know if I can go back or not. Here we go. I can, figured it out. There we go. One more time. Just the sweetest little thing. People wonder, you know, what's happening when you're up there taking that video. We are up and down really fast. One of our goals is to not stress the birds. I am not standing there for 10 minutes taking video. I'm up there, take a quick 5-second video, and then I am right back down again. The birds are circling. They are somewhat anxious. They're not attacking us, but they're very aware, and they're swooping down and letting us know they're not really happy that we're there. So we really try to get out of their way as quickly as possible. Some of the mental health evidence of birding in general, for the first time, we are linked, not just being outside, not just going for a walk, but a direct link between hearing or seeing birds and a positive mood for up to 8 hours later. That is pretty impressive. They did this with some college kids, and it just has a lot of implications for us, for our society, and for mental health at large. Us birders know that. We know how good we feel after we've spent a bunch of time out birding. I just bird both Saturday and Sunday this weekend. It was wonderful. Saw a mockingbird and all kinds of other cool stuff. And it's accessible. You can do it pretty much anywhere, except maybe not so much in Antarctica, but they have penguins there or something, don't they? I think they do. So maybe you can do it there. Can't see ospreys there though. So here's Matt again. He is removing some trash. We did talk about that a little bit with your director and some of the other people who are here on the call. He's taking some plastic down. It was really fun to work with a lot of young people on this journey. They're very sweet and kind and inclusive. I'm 60, I was 65 then, I'm 66 now. And they always just were kind and respectful and nice to, and I enjoyed like hearing about their passion and where they came from and what they wanted to do. It was very inspiring to be with young people who are starting to, who we could pass the torch to, this next generation that cares so deeply. This is Alexa. She was from the University of Maine, where my husband actually went to school. You can see this chick is a little older. You can see by that stripe on its back that's identifying it as being a few weeks older now. And one of the things that happened with Alexa was she did not bring her boots. She came wearing some very lovely leather pink Birkenstocks, brand new. And she got on the boat and I was like, oh, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that person that was going to be critical of her. And she and I have since, exchanged a lot of funny texts and emails since. She actually just asked me if I would write her a letter of recommendation for a job that she was pursuing. But anyway, here she is, and she fell over and she lost her Birkenstock, just kind of floated by me as I was in the boat, and I handed it to her. This is exactly how I looked several weeks later when I did fall into the marsh. So that's part of why I'm showing it to you. I couldn't take a picture of me falling, but this is how treacherous, how high they can be, the marshes can be. It's a lot. So you volunteers who are doing all this work, we are eternally grateful for all that you're doing to help check the nests. Unfortunately, this was a sad day on the river when she came out with us. She was the one who spotted an osprey, an adult osprey who had died, and we know what happened. We can piece it together pretty well. He had been at this nest. He was banded. He was one of our Westport, Massachusetts ospreys, and he dove in for fishing lure, grabbed onto it, locked onto it with his talons, went up into the air, but the line was still snagged on something. And so he probably, only made it a certain way up and then was pulled back down, up, down, dozens and dozens of times. The line was wrapped around his feet, legs, wings, talons, like a string on a bobbin. That's the only way I can describe it. It was heart-wrenching for all of us, especially being out with those majestic creatures for weeks, and then to see one. We were talking about this again before the Zoom started. It's one thing when nature takes care of a population by, it's sad enough when you have a great horned owl that's predating a nest. But to see human carelessness take out an osprey, it was pretty sad. And we know also the data showed us that the week before there had been a female and two eggs in the nest. And when we went up to check, because we didn't know, are there chicks up there? What are we supposed to do? And we checked and there was nothing. So the whole family, that whole osprey's family and breeding cycle was pretty much ended. right there. So it's really sad. Hit me a lot harder than I even imagined that it would. As a trauma therapist, I'm used to dealing with a lot of trauma, but that one got me. Still gets me if I think about it. This is a close-up because Gina Pertel, who is our director of that project in Westport, asked us to bring the lore back to detach it, and Matt did that. Here is the tag that identified it as one of our own. And the other thing that was kind of interesting was what I learned about talons was that the black part of that sheath is made of keratin, like our own, like my hand had fingernails all the way down the finger. That's kind of the structure of their feet and talons. And Matt had to remove a couple just to even get the line untangled. That's how tangled it was. Here's a nicer day. Oh my goodness, this was a gorgeous day. Next to seeing the first chick, this was the next best day for me because I got to band an osprey with the osprey expert in the world. Well, one of them, I guess there are a couple, but he is right up there at the tippity top, Dr. Alan Poole. And if you've ever met him, he's quite a character and brilliant. But he's a character, you know, he's an outdoorsy kind of guy and no nonsense. Like, let's get up, get down. I got an appointment. We got to, you know, be done by 11:30. So let's go. So here he is. Here are some bands close up so you can take a look. Matt doing data. Here's your wingspan. Oh my goodness, another question from your quiz. You've got it. You've got it all. If you stay for the whole presentation, you'll have all the answers that you need. This is almost the size of the birds when we do band them. We don't band them when they're little baby chicks. They are almost adults, and we wait until they're between 5 and no more than 6 weeks old when we do that banding, which is why we need to check and see when those eggs have hatched, because if we wait until after 6 weeks, they are much more likely to be startled and flap out of the nest and before they're ready to fledge. But there's another reason why we do that too. And I'll get to that in a minute. Here is Alan and Matt. And if you were at my presentation, I would be doing a live demo for you to show you what that's like. But basically, we are using a little bit of mesh, kind of like a plastic mesh, almost like we swaddle the bird and we don't take birds with full crops. They do half crops that if they've just eaten, that is a way that they could asphyxiate. So we really make sure that the birds do not have a full crop. When we take them out, we put them in that bag, hang them upside down to weigh them. And then you see here Matt using some pliers to attach that band onto its leg. And, you know, we're doing that very quickly. Here they are again, and you can kind of see it was so cool though. So I was Matt. I don't have any pictures of me being Matt, but I took that position on and actually was able to hold the osprey during that part of the process and could feel the heartbeat underneath my fingertips. It was exquisite. And also like a chance to just kind of say it's okay, just some soothing little words. And I remember Gina saying to me, are you nervous? Are you worried? Or, what? And I said, Gina, the birds are going to be anxious. And I'm like, I'm used to people being anxious around me. That's okay. That doesn't worry me. And it was another chance to sort of experience that in the animal bird world, that chance to kind of be soothing and be calm, even as we were doing something that was probably pretty uncomfortable for them. So just a few more photos of that is Gina and Matt in that process. You can see how they're, we're going up the ladder and sort of grabbing them. I don't do this, but they do, almost like a loaf of bread, very gently holding them through that process. So here's the part that I thought you would be most interested in, and we'll spend the next 10 minutes or so going over that, and then we'll have some time for questions. This is Dr. Tifen Ting. She is the director of the Illinois Osprey Recovery Project at the University of Illinois in Springfield. I got a chance to go out to dinner with her the night before we retrieved the chicks. Each year for the past 5 years, we have retrieved 12 chicks from the Westport River, and Dr. Ting has transported them in their private Cessna plane back to Illinois, translocating them. And they cannot, so we know about the 5-6 week rule. That's when we're banding them. It is also when we are retrieving them, because we don't want to retrieve them before they're able to feed themselves. Before that time, as you all know, the adult, usually they take some turns, but mostly the female osprey is doing a lot of the tearing off of the fish meat and into tiny little morsels and feeding the chicks, and gradually they're learning how to feed themselves. So what happens when they get to Illinois? How does that even work? Well, when they're in Illinois, they stay in what's called a hack box, 2 separate hack boxes. This is the one at Lake Shelbyville, and they stay there for some of the summer. I don't want to say the whole summer, but then how do they know when to let the ospreys out of the hack boxes? How do they know when they're ready to fly? That was one of my questions. And so Dr. Ting said, well, I used to just say, well, let me know when there's a lot of wing flaps going on. And that really didn't work very well. So she has interns and students and research assistants that are actually counting the number of wing flaps per osprey per day. So when they first get there, maybe 10, 12 per day. And the students are counting, writing down that data. Second week, 20, 25. By the end of that process, by the end of when we know, and they're being fed fish twice a day. So they're being, the intern just open the door and throw a fish in and they have at it. By the end of that time, upwards to 200 to 400 wing flaps a day lets her know that they are ready to go. And so they are, the hack boxes are opened, and they are then learning how to fledge, learning how to fly, learning how to hunt or fish, and spending the rest of their summer there at Lake Shelbyville. So a question that I always like to ask the audience when I'm presenting this is, how do those osprey know that, because as we know, the young juveniles fly point south at the end of the summer, and the juveniles stay in Point South for 2 to 3 years. They don't return that very next season. They have to mature sexually. How do they know to go back to Lake Shelbyville instead of Westport, Mass, where they were hatched? And the answer is pretty simple. And another reason why translocation has a chance of working. When they're in Westport, Mass, all they see is the inside of a nest and their parents flying in and feeding them. So they have no geographical references besides that for the most part. I guess they can look over the top of the nest and see water, but they don't have a view of what that geography looks like. So to me, this is so astounding that many birds can do this, not just osprey, but osprey can do it. Can remember 2 to 3 years later, if translocation is to work, where they fledged and where they got fish and where it might be a good place for them to raise a family. They get a mental map because that's the place where they actually saw and were able to record in their brain where they're at. So I just think that's pretty darn cool. Translocation day, show you quickly. There's a whole big process that happens down, like 3 pages of notes, 10-minute intervals, because again, we are really trying to minimize the stress on these birds who are going to be in a plane for 6 hours. This is Alexa, who is 20, and Dick Manchester, who's in his 90s, intergenerational working together for a common goal. It just doesn't get much better than that, at least for me. They're going out to retrieve chicks. This is pre-poop. If any of you have ever smelled osprey poop, it's quite exotic. Not really, it's very disgusting. And they put, this is in my car. We were instructed to put tarp all the way up the sides because when they get stressed, that is one of their defense mechanisms, and they just poop right out of that little hole there. This looks like kind of like a Chinese food or a cat box or something. Anyway, this is what we transport them in. We bring them to the field station. It had been pouring, thundering, pouring rain that day early. I didn't even think we were going to get a chance to do this, but we did. And here's a picture of the plane that they go in. Another intergenerational folks helping. This is Gina here in boots, Dr. Ting in the plane, and they have it down in the plane too. As you can see, this is completely coated with plastic as well. And Dr. Ting is in this tiny little cramped section with 12 of her friends for 6 hours. They go. And guess what? Our project hit 2 milestones that summer. We collected our 60th bird over 5 years, and Dr. Ting told us that 2 had returned to Illinois to begin families, and they did begin families. So it worked. It was pretty exciting to hear that. She was very gracious and grateful to volunteers. But what does that really mean? I'm reading now, what was I reading the other day about? Oh, a kingfisher. There was a kingfisher that had, that they are translocating now in the US from some island. So yes, if species are in trouble, we can rescue them and help them. But we certainly can't do that all the time with all the species in the world that need our help. It's sort of a last ditch effort. It's good we know how to do it, but it's not sustainable. got me thinking as a therapist, what would be some of the most important things that I could offer folks in terms of climate change? And some of the research that I did indicated that a lot of us rarely, or if ever, discuss this climate crisis with family or friends. It's stressful, it's depressing, it feels, when you really look at it, for me anyway, pretty scary. And yet, the very thing that makes us feel that way, isolated and alone, when we start talking about it, we can start feeling connected and empowered and part of a community of others, like you all are tonight on this Zoom call. You're all part of this Osprey Nation community that cares about Osprey, that care about Earth. And it feels good to be a part of something, to be helping. What were the things that I thought? Again, I could go into more detail, but I want to save time for questions. But just some questions to leave you with that you could, if you wanted to have a conversation with some of your friends or families or neighbors, just bringing up the topic. What do you think's happening to the environment near you? What are you noticing? What are you seeing? The second one, what are you doing to help? Because that really assumes that everyone is doing something, and I believe that we all are. And you can get some pretty cool ideas about what other people are doing. I know Gina, when we were at that very restaurant that night, ran out to her car because she had left a Tupperware container in there that she was going to take her leftovers home in, so she didn't use the restaurant's styrofoam box. So modeling for one another, learning from one another, talking about it, it helps us just do a little bit more, just a little bit more than we're normally doing, a little bit more awareness. And then the third is, there something more we can do together? Because there are a lot of wonderful groups out there, our Audubon societies, people that are cleaning up our shorelines and our parks and our natural resources. Joining up with those groups is a great way to feel less alone. The definition of a therapist is someone specializing in the treatment of impairment or injury or disease, like our Mother Earth is experiencing right now. So I like to picture myself and ourselves like nature therapists or citizen scientists, volunteers. This is where we make an impact, as well as holding our politicians and corporations accountable, knowing that we have an election coming up. And when I did the Hammonasset Zoom call a few months ago, someone mentioned that, and I try to mention that too, to remember to vote for your politicians who think or know that climate change is real and that want to invest in clean energy. It's really important. Here's my last little drawing with Mother Earth that sort of demonstrates that theory. And that's some of my contact information if anybody wants to contact me. Get a book, or you could go to my website or Amazon, or just to tell me your Osprey story. I love to hear people's stories and love to have that shared. So happy to take some of your questions, and that's all I've got for you for tonight.
Hi, Pam. How are you? Sorry. Thank you so much for that talk.
Yeah, that was great.
As you were going through, there were so many points where I was like, we have many of our Osprey Nation volunteers with us this evening, and our volunteers don't necessarily go into the nest, and so we monitor remotely, but we're also monitoring about 950 nests. And I didn't mention earlier that so we've got We have some preliminary data, but we still have 400 nests that are unreported on. So we've been putting out requests on that, and our breeding rate has been really good so far on the 450 nests that we have data on so far, but collecting data on all of those nests, we're only about halfway there, is really critical. And then you were talking about Alan Poole, and we love Alan Poole. He's done quite a few talk presentations for us, and he's very knowledgeable about Osprey, and we love hearing his stories about tracking Osprey during their migration. Our senior director of science and conservation is Miley Bull, and he's been working on Osprey. As he likes to tell the stewards, he's single-handedly responsible for saving the osprey, because when he was about 12 years old, he went out fishing with his dad, and the osprey like dove into the water, and his father said, "Those birds, when you're an adult, those birds will be extinct. They will not be here." And Miley set
Wow.
his mission on protecting those birds and others, and we have been lucky to have Miley as a part of our program. What I find the most astounding on these birds is the juveniles migrate separate from adults. So
Yeah.
they do their own individual migration, and they basically set where they're going for the winter, and they, as you said, they stay, and then they remember and come back again without any guidance from adults. It's amazing.
It's incredible. Incredible.
So I think I will read some questions for you, but at first I think what we're going to do is we are going to relaunch the poll for those people who did not get a chance to answer it. So just to give you the chance to answer a few questions and be entered into a raffle to win, Deb, is it a bird feeder?
A bird feeder, yep.
A bird feeder.
Yeah, that was great, Pam. Thank you so much. Again, that was it was fun read, and then also to actually have this to hear you talk about it and see the photos that you actually took is put it in a different perspective for me. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Even though we have a lot of our Osprey cam, and you can see the eggs and stuff, but to see your pictures of the hatchlings is very cool. I hope everyone else felt the same. We actually have a couple questions. One came in very early. When do most juveniles leave for migration?
Well, as I understand it, and please jump in if I've got my facts wrong, the female ospreys usually leave first, because as in most families, the females do the heavy lifting. I'm just joking, but also not. They leave, then the males stick around for a bit to make sure the fledglings are doing okay and getting enough to eat, and then they take off. And then the juveniles, I mean, we've seen them as late as October here, the end of October. I don't, it probably just varies year to year how warm it is, so, but that's kind of the progression and the order that they leave, and you really never know when. But the ones that you see now are probably like 99% sure those are the juveniles that are flying around now, because we're at, what are we? Mid-September. Yeah, I would say, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they'll start their migration from Connecticut in August.
Yep.
And pretty similar is you might still see some juveniles around in October, but yeah, they do their migration. And of course, the males arrive first in the spring.
Yeah.
To claim and prepare the nest for the females.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another little tidbit that Miley likes to share is the secret to a successful long marriage is separate vacations. So the males and the females winter in different locations.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes, and they bond to the nest site versus each other. So it is not as much, and that's, Alan Poole's research kind of indicates that. And they're not always monogamous either. There have been known affairs in the osprey
Yes.
world. So that's just, yeah, there's lots of, just they're one of the most researched birds in the world. So you can just find tons of wonderful little nuggets of fun facts about them, which
Well,
is
we
so
experienced
fun.
that when one of our platforms went down in a winter storm, and a juvenile male came back before the mated male.
Mhm.
And when the female came back, she paired with the juvenile male that claimed the new platform.
Just like life everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another question we have is from Linda. How do the young osprey learn to feed themselves without parents in Lake Shelbyville?
Well, they've all, so that's probably meaning, how are they hunting and how are they learning how to dive for fish and
Yeah,
those
learn how
sorts
to
of
fish.
things. Yeah. I mean, what I've understood is that there were a couple adult ospreys in the area, not necessarily parents of these ospreys, but they're still, I mean, they weren't extinct there. Their population is still not great. It has not rebounded like ours has or like Connecticut's has. So they do need our help there. But again, so much of how do they know how to come back to this place? I think half of it's probably nature nurture, some of it's instinctual, then some of it is from observation. So, but they were able to, from my understanding, observe some adult ospreys in the area fishing.
Great. We also have just some comments. Regina says, I really enjoyed your book. Learning how ospreys dive and allow for the refraction of water was so interesting to me as an optometrist. She also said that she really appreciated your discussion of weaker social ties as a source of support and positivity. Very powerful for many of us in the transitional years. And she says she would love your pickle recipe.
Oh, just send me an email. Send me an email, please. I'm happy to share it with you. Is my email there?
You did put it.
If you go
Yep.
on my website, you can just send me an email right from my website. I'd be happy to share it with you. That's funny.
We also have Charles asking, what is the benefit of a very large nest to ospreys?
That's a good question. When I first saw the nests, I thought some of those big, huge ones, like I showed you in the first slide, I didn't realize that they would be so shallow that the eggs just really just sit right on top. So I think about, if you're going to have a successful brood, you could have 5 adult size ospreys at any time, sort of navigating those spaces. Now, typically the adults don't stay, the male probably sleeps in a tree and that sort of stuff. But I would think that the more room, the better. And it does signify the maturity of the couple, because if they are coming back, they're adding more material each year. So, and mature birds, they have more experience. They've been through this drill. They know what it's like. They're probably more apt to have a successful brood. So, I don't know if that really answers it. Maybe someone else has another insight.
The larger nests might also sustain windstorms better.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And why the platforms are so essential, because nests in trees, although you can find a good nesting spot in a tree, it is much more precarious in a windstorm than a platform that has a lot of wire mesh kind of helping those branches and sticks kind of stay in place.
And they do, like you said, Pam, they do spread out as the season goes along and the young get larger. So those nests, they flatten down even more by the end of the season.
They do. They're a little crowded.
Yep, just a bit. Actually, Melissa, our Director of Development asks, do the Ospreys go to the same winter home each year?
Another good question. We're not doing any of that monitoring anymore, but there's probably some research on that. I would imagine if it was a successful place for them, if they caught a lot of fish there, that they would be prone to winter in a similar area. That would be my guess, and you're shaking your head. So
Yeah, I would say the same.
yeah.
And then we have a question asking if any of the libraries in Connecticut would have your book.
Oh, well, I think that you can ask your library if they would procure it, or you can also ask them if they'd be interested in me coming for a talk, because the Ingram, which is the big distributor, because my book had to be more expensive because of all the color in it and all the paintings and the color. Unfortunately, I had to make a choice about including the artwork or not, and it doesn't give them enough of a profit. But if your library wanted to procure it from me personally, I would give them a discount and they could put it in their library. So if you would have them, if they're interested, if you're interested, have them contact me. And I love libraries and I love giving talks there. I've talked at a lot of them this summer.
All right. Yeah, that ended the questions that we had. Again, thank you so much. We are going to end the poll. And also, this book was the beginning of our book discussion club. So anyone who read the book and would be interested in staying on for a little bit longer, Pam has agreed to stay on and talk about the book in more in depth if anyone wants to do that. So,
and
but
we
anyone
would love
else?
to see you. We'd love to see your faces and have you really participate like it was a book group. So if we could do that too, that would be great to
Yeah,
have a real conversation.
we can definitely do that. And before anyone starts to leave, we just want to say thank you again so much to our members. You really make it all happen. There's so many things that were talked about today. You know, the impacts of DDT and all of the fight that we did in the 1960s and 70s to get legislation in place to protect the osprey. Fishing lines, we're actively working across the state with all of our stewards to ensure that there are fishing line canisters and awareness for fishermen about not abandoning fishing line because it really is an impact. We're looking at, we fought for Menhaden restrictions. We fought for horseshoe crab harvesting restrictions in our state. And lights out, of course, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about pesticides because we just have ongoing concerns about the impact of what's going into our waters and what's impacting these birds. And I just want to thank you because you make that, your enthusiasm and passion for protecting these birds is really what makes us enthusiastic and as passionate about talking about it to anyone who will listen in the state. So keep it up and keep letting us know what you think.
And I'm going to give them all the wow button for tonight for being here.